There you go.
I hear you. Oh my goodness, Cameron. I expected a little more than that, but you know what? You got to hit me with what you got to hit me with, don't you?
I
Go
want
ahead.
the mystery solved here. You've hit me 3 days before saying, "Oh, I got a good one," or you got something, and then you won't tell me what it is.
Well, it's because it's a challenge I've been struggling with for a while, and
Okay.
I've had some experiences recently that have made me question whether it's a challenge I need to address or it's just my new life, right?
Hmm.
So I'll share with you. I'm going to get kind of raw here with you a little bit
Okay.
because after Shelly passed away, she was pretty much my focus. A lot of the things that I did revolved around her. Obviously, you know how that is, Cameron. You kind of have the same type of
Yeah.
relationship with your wife, and as you can imagine, it throws you some curves, right? My wife presented a tremendous amount of joy in my life, and not only did she do that, she planned all the joy in my life, right? So I was kind of along for the ride. My wife was pretty good about thinking outside the box and making things happen and creating things to look forward to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of along for the ride. And um, so after she passed away, I wouldn't say I'm rudderless, but I've found myself, the old Kyle prior to her passing was probably 99% happiness, 1%, you know, I don't know the other word for it. I wouldn't say unhappy, but I would say contemplative maybe, or I don't know what's a good word for when you're just kind of in limbo. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I don't know the right word, but anyway, existing. Let's just say that. Okay.
Okay.
Well, you know, for the first 6 months or so, it's like you're facing so many new challenges every day that you don't really have a chance to kind of think about where you're at. And then once you start to realize this is it, right? I mean, I still wake up sometimes I can't believe it, but after 6 months or so, you kind of have to settle in and say, okay, well, I guess this really did happen. I kind of have to face it. You're laughing, but, and I still face that, right? But I've found myself, uh, I, I'll just tell you how I feel. I've been waiting to die, right? It doesn't mean I don't live happily,
Right.
uh, but it's not a good thing. It doesn't feel like me, right? I'd say it's a 60-40 Kyle in a happy place and 40% Kyle in a uh, existing.
Placeholder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A placeholder. And it hasn't made me happy, but it's something that I've had to fight thoughts and feelings have been, that have tried to crush me regularly for a long time now. Right. And I've
Mm-hmm.
kind of gotten to a place where I've thought, okay, well, I mean, I can't change what happened. And if I'm 60-40, that's probably better than most people anyway. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
right.
Uh-huh.
And my 60-40, my 60 is represented to the world. My 40 is in my own mind and in my own
And
time, you know?
mm-hmm.
So the world sees what they see, and that's still who I am.
Right.
But that other 39% was also in that happy space because I could focus on Shelly and, the joy she brought. And so I kind of find myself in a place, and I said something out loud a couple weeks ago, and my daughter heard me. And I said something like, hey, I'm not, it's not like I have any joy in my life. Can you just help me out here? And she said, what did you just say? Right. And it was, and I ran from facing it in that moment because I realized she got a slight glimpse into the 40% that I struggle with, you know?
Hmm.
Well, the idea that I'm just waiting to die doesn't thrill me, but it also didn't bother me so much, right? I mean, I'm gonna live joyfully at least 60% of the time. The other time I'm contemplative or existing, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, about a week ago, maybe a little bit more than a week ago, I had a dream, and in my dream, I woke up and I was real dizzy, and so I stood up and started walking around trying to get my balance because sometimes I wake up dizzy. I don't know what it is, but and I ended
Okay.
up kind of falling outside the door into the street looking for a friend that lives nearby. I was going to try to get to him, my buddy,
All right.
and uh, and then I passed out once I hit the street, and then I woke up on my own couch, surrounded by 10 people from the church,
Huh.
and I'm like, and my buddy, right?
Yeah.
I said, hey, thanks for. I said, I don't know what happened. I was just kind of dizzy, and thanks for dragging me back in the house and taking watching out for me, right? And I could tell there was this overwhelming tension in the room. Why were there 10 people from my church there plus him? So
Yeah.
I tried to stand up and I was tethered to all kinds of different oxygen and IVs and all these other things, right? And I said, well, what's going on? They said, well, you've been in the hospital for about a week and they finally released you. You're home now. And I could
Huh.
tell everybody they were in peril.
Right.
So I said, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. And they wouldn't tell me. And so I finally talked Richard into telling me what was going on. Richard's my buddy. And he says, you have about a month to live. You've got some terminal stuff that can't be operated on. And I went into a state of fury, rage, right?
Yeah.
And I woke up for real
Okay.
and I was furious. I got up and was stomping around my house. I was stomping. I was so angry. The dream made me so angry, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of guy, just so you know, I have dreams all the time. I remember them all because a lot of them because I wake up all the time. I don't sleep well. It's rare that I sleep
Hmm.
more than an hour and a half without waking up, at least opening my eyes and going. I can go back to sleep quickly, which is good. But because I wake up so often in the middle of dreams, I remember 'em. Most of them are just goofy and silly, and I just discard them. But if they're something that I feel like I need to figure out, then I'll keep them in my brain, or if they stay in my brain, most of them just go away and I can't even remember the dream, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But the ones that stay, I think, well, they mean something, and I always want to make them mean something good.
Sure.
So I think somehow this is my perception of this dream, and my perception is my reality, as you well know.
Yeah.
That I need to quit the 40%. I need to quit waiting to die. I need to quit existing in that 40%. And I'm not sure. I've got some ideas that I'm going to try, some things I've been working on since then, but I'm not sure how do you face existence, right?
Yeah.
And I know it's a tough question to ask people who haven't experienced the kind of loss I have, but maybe I'm too deep in the forest and I can't see the trees. You know what I'm saying? Maybe just an
Hmm.
outside perception. So I'm curious, just the thoughts that have come into your mind during that quick, I guess, layout of the situation. I want to hear your thoughts.
I don't think you do want to hear my thoughts, Kyle. They're
I do.
They're
I
kind
really
of
do. They're what?
they're the hardest thoughts ever.
Let me hear them because I can face it. I can face it, Cameron.
Yeah, but you're not going to like it.
Okay,
We've already talked about some of it, and it's stuff that I've told you, well, I'll never bring that up.
bring it up.
Okay, it's not good for man to be alone. There you go.
I hear you. Oh my goodness, Cameron. I expected a little more than that, but you know what? You got to hit me with what you got to hit me with, don't you?
I guess I don't want to go there.
You know
How
what? It's okay.
this
It's
is
okay. I know you care.
I'll tell
I
you
really
why I don't want to talk about it,
okay.
because when we went to Florida together after Shelley passed and we were talking about things, you know, I in my mind I tried to put myself into what it would be like. And I tried to shift from compassion to empathy so I could kind of understand. And it was so overwhelmingly scary. It was so brutal. I couldn't do it. And so I kind of soft, basically, people are introspective until it hurts, right?
Yep.
I
Yep.
it hurt, and so I stopped. I was like, no, I can't do that. And we talked about people's lack of judgment, right? When trying to set people up because they don't understand and they don't know and they don't. There's a lot of reasons, but for me, it comes down to two things. One, they are not aware enough to recognize now is not the right time, or two, they're just so unhinged that it wouldn't matter if it was the right time or not, right?
Right.
Both disqualify it as an option. And then I started thinking for myself, I was like, well, I think I would seek companionship. And then over the next year, as I thought about it and what that would be like, I realized I probably couldn't do it. Not not like it would be too big of a. There's a movie called A Bridge Too Far. Have you seen it? It's an oldie.
No, I haven't.
So here, the concept is that if you're going to take a position, you have to be able to support that position with supply lines, right?
Okay.
And you can only you can only get to you can only take a position as strong as your supply line is.
Okay.
And this movie is all about this process. And then they took a bridge, but they weren't able to reinforce it and supply it. And it was a bridge too far. And so they ended up losing not just the bridge that they had taken, but some really key movie stars that were portraying the characters. But no, they lost they lost what they had gained because it was a bridge too far. And for me, as I thought about it, I realized it was a bridge too far for me to be able to go to that.
Mm,
I couldn't get there. I wouldn't have enough support internally to be able to cross that line. And that's not a reflection on my um, unwillingness. It's a reflection on the very thought of trying to do something without Sarah and having, I'm going to use some of your words, to have some of that joy and fun that's brought about because of another person, that my mind rebels against that and my heart flees.
right.
I
Right.
I don't want
Yeah,
that at all.
you're right. That's exactly what happens. That's you've hit the nail on the head, right? And I think that's what's happened to me is my is I can't. Well, you said it well, right? It's a bridge too far, even when you're forced to face the bridge too far. If that
Yeah.
makes sense, right?
Hmm.
There isn't the resources. So what do you do? You know, you can't just collapse and fall apart, right? That's not acceptable. right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not acceptable for me personally. I shouldn't say that's not acceptable, but I don't. That's not an option in my resource book, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that might be where that 40% is like, holy crap, I'm extended too far, you know. And I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build some sort of resources without that resource being what you say.
Yeah. Okay, I got to tell this story. So Sarah had a procedure done a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and it wasn't anything big, but they were going to sedate her, and there's always that risk, and I hate it because I get anxious and I get worried because I know people like yourself who have lost a spouse, and I just, you know, I
It's difficult.
dread it, and I know it's not a faith. I know I'm not being faithful because I have so much fear, and I recognize that, but it's there, and I anyway. And so afterwards, when she was doing really well, she came out of sedation like better than she ever has before, and she's had more experience with it than most people. And I was joking around about it. I was like, "Oh, I'm just so glad you're doing well." And she goes, "Oh, were you nervous?" I was like, "Yeah, I was." And we joked around what I would have done if she had passed away. And
Ah,
one of the funny options is that we were going to move in with Kyle. I was going to become a roommate with Kyle.
that would be companionship, but probably not what you're talking about. There's probably
No, not that type. But, that's where my mind is, right? So
yeah.
that's why I don't want to talk about the hard things cuz it's too hard.
You know what? I the word you said there, which I appreciated, was companionship, right?
Mhm.
And I'm gonna have to spend some time in that in and figure out what that means to me, right? And maybe it's just having dinner with somebody and going
Mhm.
home, right?
Yep.
Maybe that's where I just need to open that door to that. I don't know. I'll have to think through this. I'm thinking out loud right now, and that doesn't even make me very comfortable right now in
Yeah.
this moment. It all seems terribly wrong. It all just seems
Yep.
terribly wrong.
And here's one of the things. So I have three daughters who are over the age of 20, and they are all welcoming the idea of eternal celestial marriage. That they would love that. One of them is closer than the other two, but I talked to them all about it. And one of the problems I've noticed is they keep getting in their own way because they know what the destination might be.
Yeah.
And Sarah's given them some really good advice, and that's to live in the middle, not to live in the start and not to live in the destination, but to live in the current where they currently are and see what joy and what I forget the word she used. She's so good at things. I'm just gonna say to be able to pull as much goodness out of their current experience, even if they know that it's not going to work out for an eternity. Because you can have fun with someone without that type of commitment. I had a lot of first dates. I had more first dates than most people. Kyle, in college, as I was trying to find, I came home from the mission field. I was going to be engaged within a year. That was my goal. And I knew I needed to date a lot. So I averaged 6 dates a week. Average. That
It was a
means
numbers
some
game.
weeks
It was a
I
numbers
did
game.
10.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was purposefully dating to find somebody that had the attributes that I found attractive. And was it a chore? Well, yeah, but it was very fun. Some of them went horribly. In fact, there was this one, oh my goodness, not a touchy feely guy. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm 6'8", and this gal, We'll just say that she was probably 6'3". She was really tall, and she was so excited to be on a date with a gentleman who was taller than her. Right? We went to a dance, and I know how to dance. I don't do the spin around in a circle. I waltz, I two step, I mean, I can even polka. I enjoy dancing, right? But she just wanted to bear hug. And I get it cuz
Yeah.
she never gets to bear hug. And she wanted to be fit. A friend of mine, as I was telling her about this gal, I was like, I just can't date her anymore. She couldn't handle, I couldn't, she would not disengage physically. And
Yeah.
she goes, well, I just wanted to feel small and petite. And she hadn't felt that way, and since she was a little kid, and her dad was spinning her around. And I was like, now make me feel even worse about how I
Right.
treated her on the date,
Right.
because I kept saying, hey, let's waltz. I don't bear hug. I'm not going to give you a kiss. She was she wanted to feel a specific way. That was a horrible experience, and yet it was fun. And at the time I was like, wow, this is going to be a story to tell, which I've rarely told that story. But of course, now I've recorded it on YouTube. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that, that, even that bad experience, I was able to pull a lot of fun and good things from.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends now is someone that I danced with all the time before I was married. And my wife has become really good friends with her. And I get to see her every now and again. And, it's like, hey, it's good to see you. I, I could not, I couldn't go back to that in my mind, going back into that realm of where I was purposely dating. That just sounds horrible.
You just,
So,
yeah, you just kind of hit the nail on the head right there. You just kind of, and what, here's what you've made me consider. I
okay.
need to think through some things, but living in the current, I think is a great idea, and pull goodness out of the current,
Yeah.
right?
That's Sarah's advice. She's good.
Yeah. Prior to getting married, I kind of did the same thing as you. I kind of had this thing that said, okay, we're either going to get married or break up. So if I know we're not going to get married, why delay the inevitable?
Yeah.
Right. And so I would say, I don't think this is going to work out. I appreciate this, but I don't think it's going to work out. And that left kind of a wake of unhappy people, right? Everywhere Shelly and I went, there'd be waitresses or, I mean, there
Yeah.
were, I was indiscriminately dating, you know, the other thing, and the whole idea of it to me now is, and if I was dating a girl, by the way, and another girl walked by and she got my attention, I kind of figured the girl I was dating probably wasn't the one for me,
Hmm.
right?
Just chemically. So a girl walks by, chemical reaction happens, and you go for an additional look of beauty.
Yeah.
You figure, well, if I'm able to be distracted by that, then the person I'm with must not be of
And you know what?
the quality of
All
caliber I'm
that
looking for.
changed when Shelly and I, Shelly and I started out as friends, and we would go places together. She'd call me and say, "Hey, I got tickets to Six Flags." I'm like, "I'm in," and we'd go to Six Flags and have fun, and it was like two friends, right? Or she'd
Mm-hmm.
call me and say, "Hey, my dad just bought two big old giant buckets of chicken. You want to come over and have some chicken with me?" I'm like, "Yeah." Right. So eh, a lot of the things we did, we probably dated for 6 months without even really like any, I would say, physical stuff. I mean, holding hands or kissing or anything. We
Mm-hmm.
just were friends, and we were dating other people at the same time. But once I realized what was happening with her, I had tunnel vision, and everybody else kind of disappeared, right?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful story, and I think it's the only story that could have worked for me, right? And so it's hard for me to, Cameron, my choices now are a few. I really like what you said. Current. I can I can go have dinner with somebody
Mm-hmm.
and be in the current and extract fun and joy from that, and just do that and just be in the current. And companionship, I think, is the right word to start with, right?
Can I
It's
ask you
obviously
some
the right
hard
word,
questions?
huh?
I I got to ask some hard questions because
Go ahead.
how do you? Because I've thought about this way too much. My wife's not even dead, right? And I this is
You, every morning,
how in the world?
pray to God and tell him how grateful you are. You know,
Yeah,
I've had people come to me and say, "What can I do for you, guys?" And I've said, "Love your wife, man.
yeah.
Just go love your wife. That's what you can do for me, right? You can't do anything for me, but
Mm-hmm.
man, you can do that for you. Go love on your wife." That I don't know that that's for me, but if you get to do that, do that. Right? Sorry,
Yeah.
Cameron. Go ahead with your questions, because by the
So
way,
how in the
you
world?
should know. You might ask me questions I haven't considered because I'm an expert in focus on. I'm an expert in keeping my mind off things that I don't want to keep my mind on.
Yeah.
I am an expert because I know what it does, right? And so there's you may ask me some questions I have not considered, and I'm okay to consider. So go ahead, hit me with it. And if they're hard, ask me.
Okay. So
Okay.
how can you even have a current enjoyable evening with all the implied pressure of dating a woman or going on a date or doing something with a woman who doesn't who you don't know well enough to know what their motives are? Because when we're young, we're all in the same boat. And now I I I have had sisters-in-laws who have, for various circumstances, gone back into the dating pool, and some of them were like, I'm just going to have fun. I don't want a relationship. I just need to get out there and have some enjoyment. And that's cool. But then I've heard these stories, and I'm not saying that these were my sister-in-laws, okay? These,
Right.
which by the way, my sister-in-laws have found these wonderful men that I adore and I'm so impressed with. Okay. And my brother in law who found Ruth, and my sister in law who found Ken, and my sister in law who found Phil, they give me great hope that there is more out there than what I can perceive because they've gone through it. But how in the world do you date or go do something with someone, go to an activity where they might be like chomping at the bit, ready for far more than just current fun and enjoyment? How do you communicate that so that they don't get false expectations and think that an enjoyable evening doing something in a companionship like manner means something more? Because you're nicer now than you were back when you were dating and leaving a trail of broken hearts in your wake.
Yeah, I'm probably I probably am nicer. Um, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I'm thinking out loud here. Do you, Cameron? I don't want to take care of anybody else,
Yeah.
right? I took care of Shelly. She was my queen. I took care of her.
Yeah.
I wanted to. I wanted to serve her. Right. I don't really want to do that with anybody else. You know, I don't even want a dog. My kids are like, "Can we get a dog?" I'm like, "No, why not? Because I'll have to take care of it. I don't even want to take care of a dog, much less
Yeah.
another person, right?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, and and I remember Craig telling me, my brother Craig, who went through something similar, dating. He said my options are a woman who's been divorced and probably has a big old load of baggage, a woman who's a widow or widow. I don't know the difference. I still don't know what I am. I,
You're
you
a
know,
widow, or
I don't really. Yeah, I guess I'll forget. You
yeah,
see, I keep my mind off stuff that I don't. That doesn't. It's not productive. I just keep my mind.
let it go.
I
Doesn't
won't know.
matter. Yeah.
A week from now, I won't know what I am. That's my other option. The third option is somebody who's never been married.
And then the question is, why weren't they married?
You just hit the nail on the head. That's what he said. And by the way, I haven't thought through this, but I remember him saying this. And now that that we're talking about it, I'm thinking through it too. Right. And I also, my wife and I, when somebody we knew got divorced, we had this thing where we would refocus on each other,
Mm-hmm.
but we would also, she would call the wife and I would call the husband, not right away, but down the road, and just kind of, we're curious what happened.
Yeah.
Right. And the guy's perspective was always dramatically different than the girl's perspective. Right. Very
Yep.
rarely, I would say 10% of the time. So you can tell we've seen a lot of divorces, right?
Yeah.
10% of the time, they would take responsibility, either one of them. The rest of the time,
Mm-hmm.
there was no responsibility taken. You know what I'm saying? But it was a great tool for my wife and I, because I could tell her what he said, she could tell me what, right, and it was a great way for us to communicate. And obviously, there's differences the way men and women communicate, and they
Yeah.
have different perceptions of the same situation. But it also made me a little bit. Well, it didn't just make me closer to Shelley, but it made me more fearful of humans in relationships.
Yeah.
I remember one time my son told me, because when your sons get married, 50% of marriages end in divorce, right?
Right.
So it's scary. And my son told me, Dad, 50% of marriages stay together. Right? That's what he told me. And I said, man,
That's
I'm so
awesome.
glad you said that. What a beautiful thing to say, right? What
That
a what
is.
a
Yeah.
wise what a wise thing for a young man to say to his dad, right? But I think part of it is I had spent so much time talking to these individuals who had gone through these divorces that I don't know, I kind of lost faith a little bit, in others. And so that I'm just sharing with you where I'm at, right? I don't want to take care of anybody else.
Yeah.
I can't replace Shelly.
Nope.
I don't really want to. My family, we get together at least once a week, and all my kids are here. We have so much fun. I don't want to bring anybody else into that with an outsider, you know, for a couple of
Yeah.
reasons. What if they mess it up? What if they,
Yep.
or, I, my family's a little off in how we talk and do things, and it's acceptable. And you know how silly we are, and nothing's off limits. So I don't really want anybody judging me or there's all these things, Cameron, that I'm thinking through right now. You know,
Yeah.
and I,
Okay. So now I've asked the negative type questions, right?
yeah,
By the way, it right now 43% of first marriages end in separation or divorce within 15 years.
okay,
So it's less than 50% for first time marriages.
yeah,
I have relatives who have totally blown the stats because, they've been married and divorced, you know, like 6, 7 times. So
yeah, yeah, I do too.
it's like, let's just count the first one because
Yeah,
that's the one that,
so that's what
anyway,
that's 57% of first
yeah,
marriages stay. Okay,
yeah, are
okay,
still married. and
That's
not
good.
separated.
I like that number. I like that it's higher than the middle. That makes
Okay. So here's the cool part
okay.
about living in the moment, or being living currently, the way that Sarah describes it. The way she talks to my daughters about it is, it when you do something with someone and you have that shared experience, you now have a shared experience to decide whether or not that's something you want to do again or not. And you don't have to let them be exposed to your entire being. And for our family, we have 8 kids. We're, you're playful and fun. We are so musical. It's disgusting. My brother Eric used to say, I hate musicals. I was like, I love musicals. Why do you hate musicals? He's like, because where in real life would people just break out into song? Um, I married into my wife's family that they break out into song. And no, that song we sang for Christmas, Carolyn, at your
Yeah.
place, the last one, it was the Christmas whatever. They wrote that in the car on the way over. They're like,
Yeah.
hey, let's just write a different one. I was like, okay. And they do it that, I participate by making a drum beat, but we don't expose people to the uniqueness of our family's musical ability because it's just overwhelming. We don't just say, hey, it's good to meet you. Hey, now let's do a musical together.
Yeah.
That's not something we do. We don't have to, we can lead them into it and see how comfortable they are before we totally expose them. Give them a taste, see if they like it. And so far, the guys who my daughters have introduced to the family, they seem to really enjoy the fact that there's always music being practiced or played or created in our home. It is constant. There's not a day that goes by without something musical happening. And I have noise canceling headphones because people say, oh, that sounds so wonderful. It is not. It
Yeah.
is the loudest screeches and scratches of stringed instruments, and the same notes being played on the piano while they figure out the words or the lyric or the right melody to songs over and over again. The process is painful, but the results are impressive when you don't see the whole mess being created. So when when you're experience you're having a shared experience with someone, you can decide whether you want to do that again and perhaps do something more. There's nothing that says that after you go out and you have a dinner together
Yeah.
that you have to do it again, and you don't have to bring them home to your family.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're helping me through this, Cameron. Yeah. You're helping me through this. I just wrote down here's where I think I'm at, and
Okay.
I've already made a plan. So you know the story of the when I was working for my brother.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this story or not, but I'll share it with you. So I walk whenever we had a difficult client, I would walk into his office and say, "Here's the situation," and he would ask me, "What are you going to do?" And I would tell him, and he would guide me with his knowledge of his business, and you know,
Sure.
and he would say, "Consider this, consider that, consider this," and he was basically training me to kind of take over things for him with client management, basically. Well, I went into his office one day, and this wasn't his client, but this was his partner at the time, and his partner was difficult.
I remember that guy.
Yeah. So I walked into his office and I said, "Here's what's going on." He said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, if I do this, he's going to do this. And if I do this, he's going to do this." And he says, "Well, that sounds pessimistic." And I said, "Well, I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist. I know the guy. I've worked with him a long time. I know who he is." And he said, "Well, that's what pessimists call themselves. They call themselves realists."
Uh-huh.
And it made me
That's
mad, right?
yeah.
So I went out and bought a book called The Power of Positive Thinking or something like that. I think that's the name of it. And I said, "I don't like that. I want to be an optimist, right?
Yeah.
And I was an optimist, and you know me, I'm a pretty optimistic in most areas, but
Sure.
I also think we frame things in a certain way, and I had framed this guy in a certain way, right?
Sure. Hmm.
And so I went and read the book, and a week later, I was back in his office talking about somebody else, and he said, "There you go, being a pessimist again." And it really made me mad because I said, "I've read the book.
Yeah.
How how I read the book. I'm an optimist." And that was when I realized I needed to break the book down. There was 10 lessons. So in week 1, I took lesson 1 and I made a worksheet. You know me and worksheets.
Sure. Yeah.
And I focused on that one component for a week. Week 2, I did lesson 2. Week 3. After week 4, I was in his office one day and he said, Something's going on, man. What's going on?" I said, "What?" He said, Your outlook and approach is different." And I said, "Oh, here's what I'm doing. I've taken this book that I read and you still called me out. I hadn't internalized it. And this is helping me internalize these principles." And by the way, that was a big part of my working through challenges in my own home is creating worksheets, writing things down, which I've got a half page of notes right now. I will be writing more stuff down and creating a worksheet in this avenue. But I think what I probably need to do is my framework. Shelly and I created a 1% happy marriage,
Hmm.
and I can see other 1% happy marriages. When I walk around and I see couples together, I can see them, right? But they're few and far between. That's why it's called a 1% happy marriage,
Yep.
right? And when I see them, I tell them, I'll say something to them just because it makes me feel good, right?
Hmm.
To go to people and say, "Hey, I see how you guys feel about each other, and it's beautiful, and it makes me feel good, and it doesn't hurt them either, obviously, right?"
Yeah. Yep.
But that means 99% is not the 1%, right?
It's
And
true.
so my framework of the world is of the 99%, right? And statistically, I felt that's one area where I felt unique and different. And so my framework of dating and all this stuff is the 99%, right? Because you see a lot of people out there that just don't seem happy. They just don't.
Right.
And obviously I'm not saying I read everybody perfectly right, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
I
And
do.
I'm and
Yeah.
I'm not judgmental of them. I just, you know, I'm so I really need to change. I think what I need to do is go grab my book. I know where it's at, the same book. And I think I need to focus on that in that area, right? Read it with that purpose, with the purpose of companionship in mind.
Hmm.
And because I know if I don't do that, I'll go into everything with a realistic approach, which is what pessimists call themselves, instead
Right.
of going into it with an optimistic approach. And I'll go back to when Shelly and I were dating. I had a big wall built around myself. I'll share a story with you. I dated a girl in high school who was a really sweet girl, and for whatever reason, it didn't. You know, you know how high school dating is, right? I mean, you go different ways. All kinds of different things happen. Well, I
Sure.
ended up dating her a couple of years after high school, and she said to me, "You're so different. I can tell you don't let anybody get close to you. You don't let anybody. You've built up a wall around yourself." And she said, "You're not letting me get close like you did in high school."
Hmm.
And she said, "What happened?" And I said, I didn't realize that, you know.
Yeah.
But what Shelley did was she broke through my wall in a very natural way. She didn't come to me and say, I'm getting inside your wall. She just did. She just broke down all the barriers, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I knew she was that's kind of when I knew, wait a minute, I'm acting different around her, right, than anybody else. I'm careful what I say. You know, she's different. And so,
Yeah.
and maybe that's the same approach I need to take is just to go into this thing and say, I am who I am. She's not, nobody's going to be Shelly, and that's okay.
Mm-mm.
But I need to allow the opportunity for companionship. And then just if somebody does break down walls, they break down walls. If they don't, they don't, right? I mean, maybe that's
Yeah.
the, and again, I don't, I wouldn't say I was mean to people or to girls prior to Shelly. I was just more matter of fact.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would do that now. I couldn't see myself doing that now, you know,
Right.
but
Because, yeah.
it's a tricky, complicated. You know me, Cameron. I'm a simple minded guy. I want it to be simple, but
Mm-hmm.
complicated challenges require complicated solutions.
Because
And here
it's
I am trying to
involving humans.
I'm trying to simplify it down to real simple things here.
Yeah. So I got to tell you about my seminary teacher that I. Okay, so you talk about fun. This seminary teacher was so awesome. He used to work at a convenience store to make ends meet, right? So he was teaching seminary. He was actually the principal of our seminary at Meridian High. His first name was Craig. So he invited me, Chad, and Barry, good friends and he's like, "Hey, I want to do a practical joke on these ladies who deliver the sandwiches in the morning." And we're like, "Okay." He goes, "So I want you to rob me with them in the store." Can you? So I'm a 6'8", fairly
Yeah,
athletic guy.
yeah,
Barry and Chad have, we get bandanas over our faces and we hide in wait for them to come into the store, and then we have big knives and we rob him, and he's just laughing, just fun loving guy, right? That's my perception of him.
right.
Just and just an amazing example of fun paired with purposeful living. And he was in my stake growing up. And then after I graduated, he stopped being a seminary teacher. And I didn't know what was going on, but he moved to Idaho Falls or Twin Falls or somewhat one of the falls. And so when I was passing through on business, I contacted him. I said, "Hey, can I come visit?" And I go and I visit, and my entire exposure to him prior to this was seminary teacher, teaching religion, fun outside of seminary, willing. When I broke, okay, just to tell you what type of guy he is, when I broke my leg and came home from the mission field for 3 months, he came to visit me with a box full of church educational system videos and said, "I know you can't do much," because back then, if you were home from a mission and you got released, you could not go back. So I was not released as a missionary. I had to follow the missionary rules. And he brought me a box of videos and said, "You might want to pay special attention to these ones with Hugh Nibley. They're great." Right.
Right.
And on every cassette tape, it was like CES use only. And he just brought me these church educational system videos and I watched him. He he didn't just he wasn't just teach and forget it. He was involved in his students' lives. So it was really natural for me to reach out to him and go visit him. And he then shared his story about the way that his life was impacted. And he had gotten remarried. And it was so funny to hear them talk about how they ended up together. And it was the most bizarre story ever. And I'm not going to even try. And I'll reach out to him and see if I can get him, if he has a recording of it or something. But after they were married, they they were invited to go speak to a single adult conference. And so they're going to show up, and the title of their the subject of the bulletin that was handed out or whatever, it basically said Craig and his wife are going to speak to us, and it can happen to you too.
Yeah.
And it was like, he's like, what is that? That's like pressure,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's a bizarre story, you know. Anyway, it's a
Right.
wonderful story, and I hope I can get him to share it again, because it was such a miraculous story of one thing happening, another thing happening, and an oblivious person and someone who knew what was going on and coming together, right? And I cannot imagine a better example of someone who is fun loving, cares deeply about the gospel, but also wants to make sure that it's going to be the right thing with the right person, and not wanting that pressure of having to perform and be not a fake Kyle or a fake Craig, but just to not have to be on their ultra best behavior, which isn't maintainable, but to be real with someone. And I'm going to reach out to him and just find out, because if he has it recorded, it if nothing else, you'll get a big kick out of it because it's so funny.
Yeah.
And if not, it's it's all good anyway. But
Yeah.
I hope you document your experiences, because good, bad, or ugly, I bet you it's going to help a lot of other people in the same way that you went to people after Shelly passed and were like, "Hey, how'd you keep your family together?
Yeah.
How'd your kids handle things?" Because they're probably going to come to you and say, "Okay, how in the world do you start to open yourself up to stuff?" I do have a question for you.
Okay.
What were you thinking? What did you think I was going to say when you were asking me the questions as we started out?
I had absolutely zero idea.
Really?
Zero idea. And that's not really like me. I'm usually I I think this is the issue, Cameron. I write my life story.
Yeah.
You know, I write. I'm thoughtful in how I want things to go. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the toughest things for me is this is not how I wrote it at all.
Yeah.
And my story was beautiful. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for the first little bit after Shelley passed away, I couldn't see happy older couples. I
Yeah.
couldn't see them. I would turn away and walk away mad because that was my story, right? And I think that's the challenge for me is I don't know what my story is now, right? I don't, and I can't. I don't want to write it without Shelley. I don't want to write it without Shelley. I almost want to
Yeah.
write it. I almost want to write it as a guy who was so in love with his wife that he just expressed his love to her by serving his kids and playing out the string, right? You've heard me. I think you've heard me use that term. Hey, I'm playing out the string, and that I think that's the story I've subconsciously written since her passing. None of it feels right. You know what I'm saying? It still doesn't feel right when I have to go up to my room without her. I got a king size bed up there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's the story that I've written was just so beautiful, and and I think so much of my life I've written these stories and basically worked to make them happen. right? And I don't want to write that story. And I don't like the world deciding what my story is. I don't want, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
And
do.
I realize what that is. I realize that's a control thing. I realize, I'm trying to control what I can. And I know I can't control anybody but me, but dadgummit, if I do what I think I'm supposed to and I project what I want and I work at it hard enough, I can make a lot of stuff happen. And I can't get Shelly back.
Hmm.
So it's disheartening and it's you know what the word I think I was trying to find earlier was melancholy. Right? I'm
Oh
60%
yeah,
happy and
melancholy.
40% melancholy
Yeah, it's a good
because
word.
I don't allow myself to fall into a state of depression. I don't, and I'm not saying other people can do this, but I've been blessed with some things
Resilience.
that, yeah, I've been blessed with some resilience. Yeah, I realize that. So I don't, but I can't not be melancholy sometimes. I can't, right? She provided so much joy to my life that it's just like ripping away you know, giant
Mhm.
piece of you. And so it's tricky. It's a
Can I give you some counsel?
You can. I'd love that, Cameron.
So as you start this out, treat it like an experiment. Don't expect it to go any particular way, but just find out what's going to happen. And here's the counsel part. If re, no matter what it is, it's going to be different than what you had with Shelly.
Right.
It's impossible for you to capture what you had with Shelly again because you're a different person than you were back then, and no one is like she is now. And the second piece of that is different is okay. So don't put the standards up of this is what it's supposed to be because you don't know. You've never done this before. Whoever you go out and have a meal with or go to a movie with or do whatever activity is it is that you do, you'll have never done that before with that person. And until afterwards, you won't know what it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah.
So just let those false expectations go away and recognize that what you had with Shelley was one one in whatever the population of the
Right.
earth has been until now. Not what it is now, but like all people, all time to now, and all people from here forward. It's one in all of that because she was unique and you were different than you are now, and you guys grew together, and that
Yeah.
can't be duplicated.
Right. That's good. That's good counsel. I think I'm going to couple that counsel with grabbing that book and trying to reframe the whole situation. What I don't want to do is go into this with thinking that everybody I talk to is the 99%. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
That's not going to help me at
Yeah.
all. That's not going to help me at all. And you know me, I'm
Can
all about helping myself.
you know what you could do?
What's that?
Seek the 1% within the other person. Because even though they're not, you know, together, you're not going to be the 1% together. They have the 1% in them. And if you're looking for that, then if nothing else, it just makes them feel better about themselves as you help identify it and say, hey, you know what? Attribute this is good, which you have. Now I'm going to go somewhere else because the rest of you is not what I'm looking for.
I don't think this is going to work out.
I don't think this is going to work out. Yeah.
Dude, I don't want to
Oh
do
my
this,
goodness.
man. I so badly, Cameron. I just don't
You
want
know
to
what's
do
going
this.
to happen? I'm going to go in and I'm going to talk to Sarah about this episode, and she's going to be shocked that we had the conversation.
Yeah,
because I shut
and
her
I
down
might as well
so
just,
many times.
since we're having this conversation, by the way, you're not the only guy whose wife has. I've been approached by a lot of men who said my wife sent me over here, and I said, go back and tell her no. I know what
Yeah,
this is about, and I've even told them. I might have told you this. Go back and tell your wife I was terribly offended too, so that she doesn't send you over
that's
here.
right. So they won't bring it up anymore. So
So
great.
I guess I one of the things that I share with people. So I do podcasts on grief with
Yeah.
pretty regularly now, and one of the things I share with people is don't wait to get started. Right? If don't wait until you overcome the grief before you get started moving forward. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to say this out loud, but I'll
Wow.
say it out loud. Yeah. I guess I'm okay. Maybe going to dinner. Golly, that's just bad. That's
Yeah.
so tell your wife that there has to be done.
The way
Somehow
I'm
there
going to
has to
phrase
be
it is, hey, I just talked to Kyle, and he's open to the possibility that someday he might be more willing to look at the options of possibly going out to dinner with someone.
that's a better way
Because
to say it. Yeah. But because
it's not going to be,
that's gonna with a woman that slings the door wide open. I know what you're saying, Karen.
yeah.
what she's gonna hear
Otherwise,
what she's gonna
that's
hear is
right.
probably what you said.
And what's funny is I know who she's thinking of
Oh no.
in general.
Okay. You know what? I'm stepping
And,
in and I'm gonna take your counsel, Cameron.
and
She's
she, my wife has excellent taste in people who would enjoy going out and socializing with someone without that overbearing expectation of, well, we've gone out 3 times, when are we going to be engaged,
This
you know?
scares the crap out of me, Cameron. Because
Yeah.
I have a dark side.
Yeah.
I do. And Shelly broke through it and she just brought out but I have a dark side. There's all these things going through my mind now that I haven't even considered. You know? I know who I am at my core. You know the
Hmm.
Yeah, it's tricky, man. As you can you know, it's tricky.
Oh yeah, it is. And then the questions that I go to next is, okay, do you talk to your kids about this conversation and let them know what you're going to do? Because I know Alec and
Carrie.
oh my goodness, yeah,
Carrie. Yeah.
th- their perspective is going to be far different than Jack and Chloe's.
Yeah.
So it's got, wow, how do you cross that bridge? But then again, I look at your daughter, who's such a sweet,
Yeah.
just a lovely young woman, and I bet you she would have some wonderful advice for you.
Yeah. Yeah. She probably would. Well, you might be surprised at how my kids tease me a lot about a lot of things. That's kind of the relationship we have.
What are you
Yeah.
kid? Your kids tease
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. I'm the butt of most of the jokes. Yeah. But it's funny too. They say stuff, sometimes it's over the line, and they look at
Okay,
me, and I look at them and they think that was over the line. And then later on, they'll say, I'm sorry, that was over the line. I don't have to say anything. And I'll say, well, you
yeah,
slammed up just pretty hard on that one, right? But yeah, I'm my problem now is I'm not there. You know what though? I've gotta just I don't need to wait, I guess, is that's my advice to individuals who are struggling through is don't wait to get active in facing
yeah.
this stuff.
Hmm.
Now I feel. Like I got to apologize to Shelly. I still feel married. It's tricky
Well,
deal. It's a tricky deal,
it
man.
is tricky. For those who don't know, the covenant that you made was forever, not till death. So some people out there, they'll be sitting there going, "Well, man, she's passed away. Move on." But in our belief system, you're still sealed to her. You're still married for time and eternity.
Yep.
So that's a whole nother thing to have to figure out. But I can't help but think of, well, see, and honestly, my memories of Shelley are very few. My interactions with her were not, uh, yeah. Sarah and I actually, we were driving by a Mexican restaurant, and we were like, "Hey, we went to that Mexican restaurant with Shelly and Kyle." And I was like, "Yeah, I think that's the only reason I like that restaurant. It's because of who we were with when we went there." And then I realized how few things we did as a couple, as couples.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's not something we can fix. But in my mind, the way that you talk about her, I imagine that she would also have some advice for you. And I bet you it would be really good advice. She'd probably take one of your worksheets and fill it out and not ever tell you. And then you'd have to find it later.
Yeah. I need to do some reframing here because I don't want to do this.
Yeah,
I just don't want to for
I
so
don't
many
blame you.
reasons.
And if you don't do it, I'm not gonna. I'm not
Yeah,
that.
I know. I know. I know you're not. I know.
There's. I'm shocked that when, as you're talking in my head, the thing that I was, I don't want to go here, and I'm shocked that we went there.
Yeah. Well, that's that line, Cameron, that yeah, you're not the first you're not you might have been the first no, you weren't the first to say something to me about it. There's another
Hmm.
guy I really respect. His name is Jeremy. And, you know, 3 or 4 months afterwards, we were talking, and he says, "Hey, my wife has been," and I think it's a good idea, Kyle. This guy, Jeremy, said this. I said, "Dude, it's been 3 months. If you were close to me, I would smack you right now." He said, "That's why I'm not close to you right now. That's why I'm doing this on the phone. But you need to hear it." And I said, "I'm tempted to drive over there and smack you anyway." And he said, "I know. I won't be here. I'm not at home. Don't try to find me." He knew, right? He knows the
Yeah.
deep. And
Well, and I
many
told you
times,
that I wasn't going to bring it up.
many times since I've been by individuals who I respect have said this to me, you know, multiple times. But golly, it's not an easy thing, man.
And that bodes well for your future. Because if it was an easy thing, what does that say?
Yeah, it's just not an easy thing, man.
Yeah.
I'm usually reasonably good at facing stuff, you know.
I think, okay. So objectively, though, looking at, so October 25th, what year? I'm sorry, when did she pass away?
2021, October of 2021.
Okay, so October of 2021. And it's now been 2 years and 2 months. And that was just the most awkward time for balloons to go up.
that added a little levity, and I'm kind of glad it did. We were getting a little deep there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But objectively, I think 2 years of mourning and grief and avoidance, or whatever you want to call it, where you weren't willing to look at it as an option. I think that's great.
Well, and I think
You're,
I think back to my dream.
mm-hmm.
I, I'm not a melancholy 40% of the time guy,
No, you're not.
and accepting that, I had accepted it, and I was doing things like it's been at a year. I remember saying to myself, if I can just do this another 20 years, I get to see her again. I got
Mm-hmm.
this, right? And at 2 years, I said, all I got to do is this 2 years, another 10 times.
Hmm.
And I don't want to live beyond that. I don't really want to, right? I don't really want to live beyond that age. I'm like counting down my existence.
To where you get to live again because you're with her.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking that, and I think the dream, waking up angry, and, in that dream, thinking I had, a month or two to live, and it infuriating me
Hmm.
of what I'm leaving behind and how I can't take care of, serve those people I love here. I think I'd been so wrapped up in that end result
Mm-hmm.
that it's been affecting my ability to fully serve those here. There are times when I've said, I don't, my kids will be fine if I go tomorrow. They'll figure it out. They're resilient. They can handle it. That's what I've been subconsciously, not subconsciously, even consciously telling myself. They're not the first ones that this has happened to. They'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'd even gotten to the point where I wasn't. I'm going to be real raw here.
Okay.
I haven't really been taking care of myself because I don't really want to live a long time. And if it's just natural, if I don't take care of myself and it's natural that I go, that wasn't bothering me. I know that seems super selfish, man, but
No,
I
I
don't
don't
think
think.
I don't think people can grasp. You know, I don't know that. I don't think of myself as selfish,
Right.
but I've been, but I've been. That melancholy, man. It's. I don't think it's me. I don't think it's who I need to be, right? And
Yeah.
that dream woke me up, and it made me realize
Multiple
this:
times.
I can't keep living this way because this is. I can't keep hoping that I go. You know, I can't keep
Yeah.
counting. I can't keep counting down because when I was faced with it in the dream, it infuriated me.
What a
Right?
blessing.
Yeah. My son is interesting because he he says every one of your dreams you twist to where it's good for you. I said, well, the good thing about dreams is that's what you get to do, right? You get to decide what they mean.
Right.
And I haven't even told him about this dream. I haven't told anybody about it, but I knew you'd be the one to talk to about it. I knew, and I want to talk to you about something else too after we're done here. But remind me for a few
Okay.
minutes. But this is good, Cameron. I think I can start focusing on some different things and making a new, you know, I don't know if I'm gonna maybe I just rewrite the framework of my life, right? and let the details plug themselves in.
Yeah.
You know, and melancholy is not 40% of the time being melancholy is not a part of the way I want to write it moving forward.
Would you feel comfortable sharing your vision and purpose on the on video?
Uh, why do you ask that? Would you, why do you ask that?
Okay. Well, just think about what your vision and purpose is.
Yeah, yeah, I would,
And
Kim. I would, because not too
because
many people
it
watch the videos.
that's true. Although I think this one would probably end up being the one that blows up and has, 6
Oh,
million views
are you?
because
Yeah,
it's
that's
so
great.
real and so
Great,
raw.
great.
And people love to see a car accident, especially when they know that everyone's
You
okay.
know what? It's funny you say that, Cameron. We call it rubbernecking in my family, right? I don't know if you've heard that term,
Yeah.
but it wasn't until recently that my kids understood what rubbernecking was because
Oh.
we were driving and I said the word and they're like, "What is that? What is rubbernecking?" Because we were talking about my son sometimes does things in public. You know, my more severe son,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to teach them that it's natural for people to look at unusual, weird, out of the ordinary things. They're not passing
Yeah.
judgment. They're just curious. It's rubbernecking, you know? And they're like, rubbernecking? I'm like, yeah, like when you drive by a car accident and you look to see if, you know, to see what exactly happened and if anybody's laying under a sheet. And I know that's morbid, but you love the morbid stuff anyway, right? Right.
Yeah.
So now every time we see flashing lights, you know, they're like, rubbernecking. You drive, Dad. We'll tell you everything that we see. You know, I'm like, okay, there's two of you. I want to hear each of you's detail, right? And so I think you're right. You know, people love a car accident, right? And I'm a freaking car accident right now, which in my mind it makes me think, dude, I'm so emotionally strong. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Mhm.
that's how I perceive myself.
Well, have you heard Jordan Peterson talk about people's are a balloon, their emotional their ability to handle life is a balloon, and life is going to press that until something gives, and then it all gives, right? And so that's what you've gone through. I can't I used to teach a class on interpersonal communication, and we used to talk about the different types of stress, the stress you stress, and then this other stress. And anyway, insurance companies figured out what would cause people to die sooner, and death of a child is like number one. That's like
Wouldn't be for me.
most cause of stress.
Wouldn't be for me. I can tell you that right now. There's
Right? Yeah.
a bigger one for me.
It death of the spouse.
That was
And
that.
then
Yep.
interesting is if you look at the different categories, you have divorce, which is a pretty high one, and then death of a spouse. One is a choice where generally the other one is not. And one you're in somewhat of a bit of control over, the other one you're not. And so uh yeah, I used to teach that, and I used to teach it when I was in my young 20s,
Oh yeah.
when
You knew it
I
all back
lived
then.
life and without any stress.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so funny now. But hearing you talk about the not wanting, perhaps not taking as good of care, it reminds me of a lot of what my kids have gone through with suicide ideation, and a good baseline for them when they were is when they just didn't want to live. That was like a good day, right? So
Yeah.
you're doing pretty good. This could have popped your balloon so bad that you would have wanted to take active steps to end your
Right.
life instead of passive or just the desire not to wake up. What a wonderful blessing that could have been, the outlook on death of something that's attractive instead of something to be avoided, you might have been seeking that and taking higher risk and doing all that. So,
Well, it's
you
interesting
know,
because
on the scale,
I
you're
don't,
okay.
yeah, I don't think I've taken higher risks because I wouldn't want anybody to think I took a higher risk because then they might sniff out my real intentions. And
Yeah.
I didn't want anybody to sniff me out, right?
So instead, you're just going to have it recorded on a video that goes
Well,
onto YouTube.
since my dream,
Okay.
I've dynamically changed my I have been
That
working
makes
on dynamically changing my approach. Yeah. So since my dream, which is a couple weeks ago, I would have never, and I think that's part of it. I would have never shared that with you or anybody had it still been part of what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? Because now that I've
yeah.
shared it, it goes back to when I was growing up in the hood. The number one rule of committing a crime is you don't tell anybody you're going to commit a crime.
Right.
No, you
You're
do
the
it
only one who
alone.
knows. You can't
You
get
don't tell
caught.
anybody you're planning it, and you don't. There's no trace of it. So
Right.
the fact that I'm telling you it's pretty clear at this point now that it is not part of my thought process as it was for the past 2 years, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and there's some weight I think that I was carrying with that because I knew it wasn't right. We know there are things we carry that we know we shouldn't be carrying, right? We don't want it. It's this, and maybe not everybody, but I knew it wasn't right for me to do that. I'm. Go ahead.
Okay. So it, everybody, everybody can look at their life, and regardless of their belief structure, their faith in God or not, everybody can look at the things that they, I'm going to use your words, carry or do. And there are probably three or four things that they can stop doing or give up. They don't even have to start doing something, but they can let go of that would make them a more whole, complete person. And I know what mine are. I can think about them. I don't want to give them. I don't, you know, introspective until it hurts, man.
Yeah, yeah,
I know what they are, but I don't think I'm quite ready to let them go. This business that my wife and I are building together, it's driving me crazy. I kind of know what I'm supposed to do, Kyle, and I don't want to do it. I don't want to be all in. I want to have a safety net.
yeah, yeah,
It's crazy. Anyway, so yeah,
yeah.
there's stuff there. Everybody knows it. That there's that. I mean, unless I take that back. Not everybody. I'm sure there are people with disabilities who cognitively cannot self-reflect in that manner.
Right, right, sure.
So
Yeah, or
there.
other. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't want to project that on everybody either. I know that's a tricky thing. There's we create beliefs for reasons, and those reasons are terribly valid to us, even
Yeah.
if our reasons are not totally accurate. Yeah, what I'm not trying to do is pass judgment on anybody else for theirs. I'm just suggesting I can't imagine I'm alone
Oh yeah.
in having thoughts that I know are not good and probably not what they should be, but I'm not. But but if I keep them to myself and nobody else know it, right? If I don't, I've got this theory on thoughts, and
Okay.
this is a good place for us to go with this. Thoughts become actions, actions become habits, habits become character,
Yep.
right? But everybody has thoughts, right? That go through their mind. The
Yeah.
step that I like to try to prevent is the action, right? Is the outward. effective those thoughts. Because we all
Sure.
have thoughts cross our mind. We're all going to be tempted in different ways. We all have thoughts, you
Hmm.
know, but our job is to kind of manage those thoughts in a way that doesn't, proceed to any action. I don't think the devil can read our minds. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so
He
the
can't.
only way
Yeah.
the only way he knows he's effectively tempting us is if we act in some way and give him and he sees that seed of action, right? And so I think a big part for me has always been, if there's no outward, I mean, thoughts are going to come in, but if I manage my thoughts and get them out of there and there's no action that follows, he doesn't even know he's tempting me, right? And I got, screw you, dude, right? I mean, that's crazy to say, but if I can do that, this is an area where I've thought deep about, Cameron. You know that you and I've had these conversations,
Yeah.
but the idea that, a thought is not really the idea that I don't take care of myself and I wither quicker so I can see Shelley quicker. I know that can't. I know deep down that that ain't right. I'm
Hmm.
supposed to want to take care of myself and be healthy and strong and serve properly and all those things, right? But the idea of being with her is so overwhelmingly. It, there's a pull, a magnetic pull to it that's hard to escape, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not taking action. Maybe inaction is where, maybe that's where the devil's seeing me, right? He's going, I'm throwing these thoughts in there and I see him not taking action, which is means he's taking action, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I've never slept so much in my life in the past 2 years,
Hmm.
right? And it's weird for me because you know how busy I am.
Yeah.
And I think it's,
Okay. So
or, or,
I've been
or
reading a lot of John Grisham books. He's the guy who writes the lawyer books. And I just read one called The Chamber, where it's about people on death row and they average 16 hours of sleep a day as they wait to die.
yeah, I
And
think
you
that's
just
it.
told me,
Cameron. I think that's it. Up until this dream, I mean, I'm a busybody. Once I'm up, but I didn't want to get up,
yeah.
right? But I know sleep makes time pass faster,
Hmm.
right? And I was looking for things to pass time faster. I found, up until recently, I found myself, man, if I can just get time to fly here, you know, I get what I ultimately want, and somehow that feels valiant because that proves my love for her, my deep,
Yeah. You're being
never,
loyal to her.
yes, yeah. You see how this twisted, right? This twisted
Hmm.
thought process is, but I know that dream shook me. I've never woke up stomping mad. I mean, I got up and was stomping around, so furious, and I'm like, "What the heck is going on?" And I knew in that moment, I thought, "Okay, something's happening here, and I need to decide what this means, and I need to decide that it means something good, and I need to figure this crap out." But for the past week and a half, I've been different, but I haven't really focused in on anything, right? I mean, I've been trying new things, and again, I haven't been passive in my approach. And when the alarm goes off, I get up and I'm going to bed, and I'm not trying to sleep my life away or entertain my life away with outside things anymore. So I know I'm on the right
Hmm.
path, but I knew that
Right.
I knew you'd be helpful in this case, and you just
Uh,
told me what I already knew, probably, which is kind of what happens when you face these kind of things you just don't want to do, right? Dang it.
oh, yeah.
Just don't want to do it. Okay. Well, Also have enjoyed, by the way, one of the things I have enjoyed is my mind is freed up to think about whatever I want. I mean, a lot of my time was spent thinking about how I can make her happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of my time, and those of you that are, if you're married, hopefully that's you take a lot of your mental energy in that arena. I recommend it, by the way. If you can keep your thoughts on how do I make my wife happy, how do I show her I love her, you're going to have it's going to work out pretty well for you, right? If that's where a lot of your mental thought is, that's a beautiful thing, and I recommend that. I think that's probably a secret to having a happy marriage is thinking, how can I, right? But
Yeah.
when you don't have that anymore, when that's gone, it opens up a lot of free time for other thoughts, right? And those can go in a lot of different directions. They can go bad, they can go good, but you got to fill it with
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I think that's what's happened to me. I've been filling it with melancholy, you know, instead of filling it with action, some sort of action that's going to lead me. When my daughter heard me say, "Hey, I don't have a lot of joy in my life. Just give me this one," and she said, "What did you just say?" And I kind of ran.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of hightailed it out of there, so to speak, because it wasn't a conversation I wanted to have with her, and I don't think it. Maybe she just. I was hoping she thinks it's just in passing, but I'll have to talk to her now about it. I'll have to make sure she knows. I was hoping she thinks it's just in passing. Maybe I'll have her watch this video.
There you
Go
go.
play basketball with your friends, or you know, you need to eat better or whatever. It's that's part of it. I really didn't know how to take care of myself. I focused on her. She's helped me, and now I'm left to my own devices, which is yeah. Okay, Cameron. I think I've got a plan. Actually, I've got a framework I can start working with to create a plan, and I appreciate your counsel and your friendship. This is going to be helpful for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and thanks for being so open to hard things.
You know what? It
I'm
crossed my
in
mind,
awe.
and I texted you right away because I knew if I didn't text you right away, I would back out. Does that ever happen?
Oh yeah.
It meets we talked about my son. It meets the pattern of good, right? It's talking through some difficulties with a friend, meet a good friend that you trust meets the pattern of good, right?
Yep.
Somebody that cares about you. So appreciate it, Cameron.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to cover? Or, like I said, I want to
No,
chat
let's
with
go
you.
ahead and end it there, and we'll talk in just a second.